Chapter 3. The sun was shining oppressively on the world below. The birds were singing, and a light breeze was blowing over a large hill which 5 people were running up. Ashley crested the hill first and stopped to watch the others. "Don't fall behind, we're almost done," she yelled at the 4 running behind her. Jumper was the closest, his weight vest lightly bumping into his torso as he ran. "Poor Eagle, she's really struggling back there," he said as he caught up to Ashley. Ashley frowned. "If you're so concerned about her, I can give you the same tomorrow." Jumper took the exchanges in order to keep running. Rufus was next. He was wearing weights on his arms, legs, chest, and shoes. Most of the weights were large squares wrapped in fabric. On him they looked like small brown purses. He quietly nodded at Ashley as he passed and started down the other side. "Oh, dear God! That mountain is mounting a hill! That's just wrong!" Jumper yelled back at his teammate, laughing to himself. "Andrew, if you have time to make jokes, maybe your weights aren't heavy enough," Ashley yelled. He turned and picked up his pace, deciding it was better not to test her. Axel was the next to reach the top. He was wearing weights roughly the size of those on Rufus, but where they were almost comically small on the larger man, on him they looked like a running pile of brown books. He was uttering a steady stream of curses as he went. "Henry, watch that tongue. Bite it off and you're going to have to run to the hospital," Ashley said as he started down the hill. Ashley looked for Selena and found her struggling halfway up the hill. She had so many weights strapped to her she looked more like an overweight man than the small blonde girl she was. Her head sticking out was the only thing that marked her as female. "Come on, Eagle, you need to hustle. You're falling behind," Ashley shouted down the hill as she tapped her foot. Selena's face was red from the effort of moving. She couldn't run. She could barely manage a light jog. Ashley knew she wouldn't stop, but that didn't stop her from pressing the point. As Selena jogged past, Ashley fell in beside her. "Those look awfully heavy. It's not too much for you, is it?" Ashley asked mockingly. Selena managed to sputter out a "Nope," struggling to keep pace with her captain. After a moment, she gained enough breath to say, "It might be too light." She took a desperate breath before adding, "I barely feel it." No matter that her stumbling gait and profuse sweating were proof she was lying. "Oh?" Ashley said with a wicked smile. "So I guess we can up it for tomorrow." Selena tried to respond but was breathing too hard from the effort to keep up. Their compound came into view. "Xander and I had fun last night," Selena said after a moment. She took a few deep breaths and added, "We might do it again tonight." She tried to smile but could not force her mouth into the necessary shape. If this was meant to throw Ashley off, it didn't work. "The day's still young," Ashley said. She took off at a full sprint towards the compound. She passed Henry plodding away, Rufus running with grim determination. But when she caught up with Andrew, she saw he wasn't even sweating. "How about we finish this with a race?" Andrew asked Ashley. "You really think you can beat me?" Ashley asked. "I'd bet $20 on it," Andrew said. "Deal!" Ashley yelled as she swung her foot to kick his legs out from under him. Andrew jumped nimbly over her outstretched limb. "Missed!" he yelled as he sprinted for the doors. He ran as fast as he could, his feet devouring the ground underneath him. The compound was 50 yards away, 30 yards away. A smirk broke out on his face. 10 yards away. Nothing could stop him now. Whap! Something smacked him hard in the back of his head. He fell to the ground, clutching the wounded area. Ashley walked into his view, picked up her thrown shoe from the ground and said, "Forgot to check your blind spot." She then casually walked to the door, opened it, and before walking in turned to Andrew and said, "I'll expect my 20 by tomorrow." She then yelled to the whole group, "Last one inside gets double lifting." Andrew rolled over to look for the others and how close they might be. As soon as he did, Rufus ran past. Andrew tried to scramble to his feet as Henry ran past. "Yes, no double lifting for me," Henry said as he opened the door. Just as Andrew was getting his bearings, another heavy blow hit him in the back of the head. "Sorry," Selena said as she ran past huffing and puffing. "Damn," Andrew said as he got back to his feet and slowly walked inside. He walked down the hall and took a right into the main sparring room, where everyone else was taking off their weights. "Well, Andrew, looks like double lifting for you," Ashley said. Take off your weights. Everyone take 30 and meet in the weight room. After that, we break for lunch. Andrew and Henry left together, talking about snacks. Henry was laughing about how Ashley had thrown her shoe at Andrew when Xander walked in. "Honey," Selena said as she ran to hug him. "What are you doing out of your cave?" "Mr. Albert asked me to be here to meet the new guy," Xander said as he received a sweat-soaked hug from his girlfriend. "I need his measurements so I can start working on his armor." "Why are you so sweaty?" he asked, looking at the huge wet spot on his lab coat where his girlfriend had pressed against him. Selena shot a spiteful look at Ashley, but quickly looked back and said, "Oh, just trying out some new weights." She smiled but couldn't hide her exhaustion. "I'm going to get some water." She shot another dirty look at Ashley and left the room. When he was sure Selena was gone, Xander said, "Ash, I wish you wouldn't be so hard on her." "She'll be fine. She has too much pride to give up." After a pause, Ashley said, "You've gotten soft since you started dating her. Are you really going to let her change you like that?" Xander met Ashley's eyes. Unlike his girlfriend, he did not look away. After a small uncomfortable moment, Ashley broke the stare. "If you feel so bad for her, you can come running with us tomorrow." Xander smiled. "I'm not sure I could get used to taking orders from you." Ignoring his comment, Ashley looked back up and said, "So what do you know about the new guy?" Xander shook his head. "Not much. I know he uses a longsword and short sword combo and goes by the moniker Silver. I think it's a legacy name. I remember another player using it in the past. Mr. Albert didn't say much, only that he was bringing him in today." Ashley walked over to the lockers and started removing her own weights. "So how was your date last night?" she said with little interest in her voice. "I hope you treated her well." "Pretty good. Selena always loves going out. We had a few drinks and a nice dinner at that new French place in town," Xander said. In spite of herself, Ashley looked a bit impressed. "She really made you go to some French place. What did you get?" "Don't know. Selena had to order. I couldn't read the menu. It was all Greek to me," Xander quipped, laughing at his own joke. "You should take some French lessons, Mr. Baltov. It really is a beautiful language," Mr. Albert said as he entered the room. He was accompanied by a tall, thin young man with light gray eyes and a thick mane of light brown hair. "I believe you will both want to meet this young man. He's going to be playing for our team from this day forward. His name is Augustus Sharp, and he is currently ranked at the lower end of A class. He has been playing in the collegiate leagues. Miss Christian, you're going to have to get him ready for a true A-ranked match." "Shouldn't be a problem," Ashley said. "Mr. Baltov, you should be excited. Mr. Sharp is proficient in the operation of an exosuit," Mr. Albert said, smiling proudly. "Really?" Xander said in surprise. "It's rare for someone who plays a slash to use an exosuit. Most of them find they can't deal with the agility loss. Tell me, Augustus, how do you compensate?" "Please, either Silver or Mr. Sharp. Only my teammates and fans can call me by my first name," the young man said with an air. "Please, either Silver or Mr. Sharp. Only teammates and fans can call me by my first name," the young man said with an arrogant sneer. "If you're good enough, you can overcome a slight loss in mobility." Xander's eyes glazed over. "You don't say." Ashley's face turned red as she said, "Xander is our lead tech and one of the best in the world. You will show him the respect he deserves. Have college teams forgotten to teach manners?" Augustus smiled. "Honey, you can call me whatever you want. I only ask my subordinates to call me Mr. Sharp. But you, my lovely lady, can call me Gus." Mr. Albert coughed lightly, drawing attention to himself. "Mr. Sharp, please be respectful of Miss Christian, Mr. Baltov as well. He is costing us a pretty penny to keep, and we do want to keep him. So while you're here, you shall listen to whatever they have to tell you. Is that clear?" Mr. Albert spoke with the same calm tone he always used. "Yes, sir," Gus said. "Excellent," Mr. Albert said. "Now I have taken the liberty of loading Mr. Sharp's information into the system. Miss Christian, I'll take him to his room and have him finish some paperwork with me. You can expect him to be here first thing in the morning to join routine training. After that, I will entrust his position and usage to you and Mr. Baltov." Ashley put on a forced smile. "I'm looking forward to it." Gus showed no fear at the response of his interim captain. In fact, he didn't seem to notice anything was wrong. "When should I expect him for his fitting?" I need to make sure the armor we prepare works properly. I get the feeling tomorrow's training is going to be a rough one, Xander said. I'll have him come by tomorrow at 5, Mr. Albert said. I'm sure Miss Christian will be done breaking him in by then. We need to get him ready if he's going to play in next week's game, Mr. Albert said. Yes, sir, Xander said. We'll have the fitting apparatus ready for his training suit, but we'll need a few days to make sure it's calibrated properly. Then we can get to work on his game suit. Good. If there's nothing else, we'll take our leave, Mr. Albert said. He put his arm around Gus and guided him out of the room. As soon as the door shut, Ashley rounded on Xander. I hate him already, she said, throwing up her hands. I can't believe he talked to you like that. Don't you dare call him Mr. Anything. You call him Gus. Xander smiled. Yup, still not used to this taking orders from you thing. He shrugged. I'm not going to call him Mr. Hopefully he's not as arrogant as he seems. It was another sunny morning, and 6 people were running up one side of the hill, though 2 members were far ahead. Andrew and Gus were running side by side as fast as their legs could carry them. What set the two apart was while Andrew was wearing a light-weighted vest, Gus was wearing the weight Selena had the previous day. Ashley was yelling something that neither could hear over the sound of their feet hitting the ground. They were quickly leaving the others behind. Rather than his normal playful smile, Andrew was focused. Gus, however, looked cool and confident despite the sweat pouring down his face. Each man was desperately trying to run faster than the other. The ground looked like a blur as they ran. The compound appeared as the 2 men crested the hill. Andrew let out a grunt as he slowly pulled ahead. Gus tried adding more speed, lowering his head. Andrew let out a second grunt and pulled further ahead, the compound rapidly coming closer. He yelled as he pulled into a significant lead. Finally, they reached the compound with Andrew a mere 5 feet ahead. Both men were grasping their knees as they tried to catch their breath. Gus was the first one to rise. He managed to smile and said, Well, you may have won the race, but you really shouldn't push yourself so hard. We have a whole day of training ahead. Then he turned and walked slowly to the door and went inside. Andrew rose to a standing position and was about to walk inside when he heard Ashley yelling angrily from behind him. I told you not to race! I told you not to leave the group! He was trash-talking. I couldn't let him keep running his mouth, Andrew said. Ashley gritted her teeth before saying, You better not have lost to him. Andrew shook his head. Good. Now hurry up and get inside, and don't let him goad you again. She walked past, leaving him panting at the entrance. Drew! Drew! Andrew looked up and saw Henry running towards him, with Selena and Rufus close behind. He stood at the entrance waiting for them to catch up. Did you beat him? Henry asked. Hell yeah, I did. He didn't stand a chance, Andrew said as he tried to smile but only managed to grimace. I've never seen anyone run as fast as you without special equipment, Henry said. Andrew glared at him. Well, don't get mad. You beat him, didn't you? Just go inside, Andrew said as he turned around. They followed him inside and then down the hall to the sparring room. They could hear Ashley yelling at Gus before they even got close. When I tell you not to break formation, you don't break formation. And when I tell you to shut up, you shut up. There is no need for you to constantly harass your teammates, Ashley said with a finger inches from Gus's face. Gus looked away, shrugged, and said, I was just trying to motivate the guy. He put on a smirk. He wasn't even sweating till we started the race. I don't know how you can call that a workout if it doesn't make him sweat. Red blazed across Ashley's face. She yelled, You don't get to question my training methods. You just do what I tell you, and if you can't do that, you can ride the bench in the next game. Fine, fine, Gus said in a dismissive tone. Ashley looked even more furious. I see our talk hasn't improved your attitude. Well, I can fix that. She yelled to the whole team. Everyone, gear up! Sparring practice, now! There was a collective moan from the group as they walked across the room to their respective lockers, shed their weights, and started taking out their practice gear. Ashley shouted to the room, Selena, you'll be with Rufus. Gus, you're up against Henry. Ashley stopped suddenly at the sound of Gus choking back a laugh. She sent a murderous glare in his direction and said, Something funny, Gus? Gus smirked and said, No offense to Axel, but he's really not a match for me. I mean, he's only upper B rank. It just wouldn't be fair to him. Henry looked almost as angry as Ashley. You little shit! You think you can take me just because you're less than half a rank higher? I'm gonna show you how weak you are! He shouted. Ashley held out her hand. Henry, hold on. Henry stopped just short of pouncing on the smaller man. He looked barely able to contain his rage. Maybe you're right, Gus, Ashley said to everyone's shock. Since you seem determined to make an enemy of everyone on my team, you can fight the last two people you insulted. Andrew, please show our newest recruit just how good you are. Andrew broke into a large toothy smile, but Henry looked murderous as he gritted out, He's supposed to be my opponent, and I don't want to share. Ashley smiled. Henry, if you win against Gus, he'll take your place as alternate. That means you would get to be on the top 5. That also means you would get that introduction you always wanted. Does that sound fair? Henry thought for a moment before his face lit up. Seems fair to me, he said, pulling on his helmet and picking up his practice sword. Andrew and Henry were smiling broadly as they approached the sparring ring. Just think, buddy, you're about to get off the sidelines. We're going to have to go drinking tonight to celebrate, Andrew said as he slapped Henry on the shoulder. Yeah, you can buy me a victory round, Henry said as he glared at Gus. Gus smirked, grabbed his weapons, and sized up his opponents. Let's see if you two can make me break a sweat. Ashley walked to the side of the ring and said, We'll do this by ring out. First side to knock their opponents out of the ring wins. The 3 men walked to the large circle on the floor that marked the ring's boundaries and readied their weapons. Selena and Rufus stood on opposite sides of the ring as Ashley said, Ready yourselves? Andrew held his short swords in front of him, and Henry held his great sword angled slightly forward, ready to block. Gus stood left hand in front with a short sword and right hand above his head holding a long sword. Fight! Ashley yelled. Andrew jumped forward, throwing quick stabs at Gus. Gus easily countered with his short sword and moved to strike. Before he could, Andrew jumped back, and Henry appeared, swinging his greatsword in a downward arc. Gus had to turn awkwardly to avoid the blow. He stumbled, trying to regain his footing. Andrew came around from the side and attempted to strike Gus's back. Now we've got you, Henry yelled as he tried to deliver a finishing blow. Gus jumped to the side and rolled out of the way. He stood back up and paced backwards, trying to keep the 2 men to one side. Surprised? Andrew asked. Apart, we're good players, but with my buddy Axel here backing me up, we're almost unbeatable. Henry smirked. Gus's facial expression did not change. Look, Drew, he can barely talk, he's so scared, Henry said. Well, maybe we should finish this, Andrew said. Andrew jumped towards Gus with his weapon ready to strike. Henry was right behind him. Andrew slashed downward, missing Gus by inches. Gus hooked his short sword around the back of Andrew's weapons, planting a hard kick square in his chest. Andrew fell back into Henry, knocking both of them off balance. Gus rushed in with his long sword raised. Andrew tried to block with his own weapon. A blow crashed into the right side of Andrew's head. Gus had feigned an attack with his longsword and instead used his short sword, attacking from the side. Though the strike wasn't very strong, it distracted Andrew long enough for another kick to his chest, which knocked Andrew out of the ring. Out! Ashley yelled. Henry rushed forward. He thrust his weapon at Gus, but Gus dodged. Gus tried to get back on the attack only to be knocked off his feet by another of Henry's strikes. Gus was dangerously close to the edge when he rolled over, Henry's sword speeding towards him. Gus rolled out of the way, staying just inside the ring. Henry, not letting up, continued to strike repeatedly. Gus rolled onto his front, tucking his feet underneath him. He lunged forward, grabbing Henry while he was in mid-attack. He planted his feet in Henry's stomach, pulling back with all his might. The larger man was thrown head over heels out of the ring. Out! Ashley yelled as Henry landed. She looked sternly over at her newest teammate. Well, it seems you're better than your opponents gave you credit for, she said. I told you I was the best, Gus said. The sooner you guys realize it, the sooner I'll get the respect I deserve. Maybe you should just make me captain now and save us all some trouble. Ashley looked livid for a second. Then she smiled and said, I still see you have that little ego problem. It's only a problem if I'm wrong, Gus said. It looks like I still have some things to work out of you, Ashley said. Gus chuckled as he looked at her. Why don't you step into the ring and try me? Ashley smiled wickedly. I thought you'd never ask, she said. When I win, you're going to do sprints after everyone else has done every day for the rest of the week. Gus puffed himself up and smirked. When you lose, I take your place as acting captain, he said. The mood in the room became tense as all the players looked at Ashley. She met Gus's gaze. Neither looked away. After a few moments, Ashley said, Fine, but I wouldn't start your acceptance speech just yet. Gus picked up his weapons and took his position in the ring. Ashley grabbed her weapons and did the same. Rufus, you call it, she yelled. Rufus looked tense as he put out his hand. He looked over at Ashley with worried eyes, lifted his hand, and yelled, Fight! Gus jumped forward with his short sword raised, his long sword drawn above his head ready to strike. Ashley took a small step to the left out of the way of Gus's weapon. Gus then brought his long sword downward. Ashley hit Gus on the inside of his left thigh, throwing off his balance. Before he could adjust, she hit his hands, knocking the weapons from them. He staggered, stunned from the attacks. Ashley smiled as she hit him in the head with the butt of one of her swords. Gus collapsed like a rag doll and lay still.
This has been a reading from the book Battle Games Book 1 by T. Alex Ratcliffe. If you'd like to find the full book, or the audiobook once it's published, follow the link in the description to my Amazon page. Also, feel free to browse the other videos on my channels, including book reviews from other accomplished authors. If you are an author and interested in having your book turned into an audiobook and having me read it, please contact me through the link in the description.